Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jázmin Németh, and my PhD thesis title is Oncocardiology. I'm a medical student at Semmelweis University. I'm at my 5th year, and I'm also an MD PhD student at the Institute of Pancreatic Diseases. Here you can see the members of our team. Our vision is that the prognosis of patients with pancreatic cancer can be improved by addressing non-cancer-related morbidity. And we would like to achieve this by providing further evidence-based recommendations on the management of cardiovascular comorbidities, which can help improve the patient's prognosis. We have two ongoing projects. The first is investigating the prevalence of cardiovascular morbidity in pancreatic cancer. The second one is investigating the prevalence and risk factors of cardiac cachexia in cancer patients. Both will be a systematic review and a meta-analysis. The first one started in September and the second one in October. Let me introduce my first project. Why is this topic important? The incidence rate of pancreatic cancer is increasing year by year. To give an exact number, there were around 500,000 new cases of pancreatic cancer in 2020 worldwide. Growing evidence suggests that patients with cancer, especially with pancreatic cancer, has a higher chance to develop cardiovascular morbidity. And studies also suggest that the cancer and the cardiovascular diseases are not separate entities, but they are connected through common risk factors, pathological ways, and genetic predisposition also. Based on this information, it's clear that there's a need for preventive interventions to mitigate this risk and improve outcomes for pancreatic cancer patients. So our aim is to investigating the prevalence of cardiovascular diseases among patients with pancreatic cancer. To answer our clinical question, we would like to use a COCO-POP framework, where the condition is cardiovascular comorbidities, the context is pancreatic cancer, and the population is adults. And our hypothesis is that the prevalence of cardiovascular diseases is high among patients with pancreatic cancer. The clinical implication of this topic is if we can identify and address cardiovascular comorbidities early, that may improve the prognosis of pancreatic cancer. We conducted our search in 3 main databases with a highly detailed search key that here I present to you. At the starting point of our selection, we have more than 20,000 articles. After the duplicate removal, the title and abstract selection, and the full text selection, now we have 153 articles, but I'm working on the reference chasers results to find more articles. Regarding the progress of our first project, I would like to highlight that we are almost done with the risk of bias assessment, and I'm starting to write the methods part of the manuscript. We have a great amount of data, therefore the analysis of it is still in progress, but I would like to show you some subgroups that we could separate. The first subgroup was created based on the therapy that the patients received. In the first group, there are patients who received gemcitabine-based therapy. In the second group, there are patients who received tyrosine kinase inhibitors as a part of their therapy. And the third one, who received monoclonal antibodies as a part of their therapy. The other main subgroup that we could separate is based on the patient's tumor stage. We could create an early stage, an advanced stage, an all-stage group, plus borderline resectable group of patients. Moving forward to my second project, investigating the prevalence and risk factors of cardiac cachexia in cancer patients. Cancer is a leading cause of death worldwide. Nearly 10 million deaths per year were in 2020. That's a well-known information, but what's rarely known that almost 80% of cancer patients suffer from a metabolic wasting syndrome known as cancer-induced cardiac cachexia. I would like to highlight the word cancer-induced because there are other inflammatory diseases, for example, chronic kidney disease or COPD, where we can see this syndrome, but we are only interested in the cancer-induced form. This syndrome is characterized by low left ventricle mass, which is associated with poor cardiac function, and that leads to an increased all-cause mortality in cancer. So our aim is to investigating the prevalence and risk factors of cardiac cachexia in cancer patients. We have two clinical questions. The first is what is the prevalence, and the second one is what are the risk factors for cardiac cachexia in cancer patients. We have two different frameworks for the two different questions. The first is a COCOPOP framework again, and the second one is a PFO, where the population is cancer patients. The factors will be any reported clinical biological factors that we could find, and the outcome is cardiac cachexia. And also we have two different hypotheses for the two different questions. The first is the prevalence of cardiac cachexia is high among patients with active cancer, and the second one is there are specific risk factors that predispose cancer patients to developing cardiac cachexia. The clinical implication of this topic has two main points. The first is the identification of risk factors can influence decision on cancer management and lead to avoidance highly cardiac toxic therapies on those with increased risk. And the second point is if we identify modifiable risk factors for cardiac cachexia, we could try to prevent or slow its development. I would like to mention that the planned submission date for the first project is September this year, and for the second project is December this year. I would like to end my presentation with a quote by Oscar Wilde: "Success is a science. If you have the conditions, you get the results." Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Jázmin. Questions?
I don't really understand your interpretation of cardiac cachexia, because I think that cardiac cachexia is cardiac cachexia and has nothing to do with cancer.
I don't agree. Cardiac cachexia is a syndrome that could influence the therapy choosing of the patients. And if we could stop its development or modify its development, maybe another scale of therapies could be available for patients, and it could save their lives. So I think that's important.
Could you just share with us what kind of cardiac comorbidities have you seen during your data extraction? Any high prevalences in your first study? I know that the analysis is still ongoing, but since you did the data extraction, what is your experience until now?
The most common was hypertension. Of course, I'm not sure it's in connection with the cancer, because hypertension is a common disease among patients without cancer, but the most common was hypertension. And also we see an increased appearance of different arrhythmias. That was a surprise for me, I didn't expect that. So that were the most common. But also we saw some blocks in the patients and heart failure too. So we have a lot of data to compare. We have more than 3 articles almost in every case of the cardiovascular disease.
I want to go back to Izbeki doctor's question. What is cardiac cachexia?
Cardiac cachexia is a syndrome where the heart mass is wasting, and it's a separate entity from the systemic cachexia, so it's not always
so it's just a cachexia of the heart?
Yes.
So I can look okay and my heart is cachexic?
Sorry, can you
So I
repeat?
can look okay, I'm well
Yes.
nourished, but my heart is cachexic.
Yes, that's true.
And how is that defined objectively? Like, what measure beyond which you say this is cardiac cachexia? Thinness of the muscles, or what is that? It's
The
quite
diagnosis
subjective.
is usually based on the ultrasound of the heart and measuring the parameters of its pump function and the wall thickness, so we can measure it.
Strange entity. Never ever in my life heard about cardiac
It's a hot
cachexia.
topic actually nowadays.
A new invention.